Hi, I'm Rachel, and I guess I'd say this is less of a review than an interaction with Glance, this poetry collection by Chanda Feldman in honor of April 2025 National Poetry Month. So, a brief introduction to the author, courtesy of Wikipedia. She is an assistant professor of creative writing and chair of the creative writing program at Oberlin College. She was born in Tennessee, and she has two poetry collections, Chance being her second one, and she's been noted in Callaloo as an example of Black people in poetry in American colleges and universities, along with other Black poets. I became aware of Feldman and her poetry through this year's National Jewish Book Awards. Glance was a runner-up for the Poetry Award this year. Feldman herself, I think you could tell through some of her poetry I'll get into, she is a Jew by choice, married to, a Jewish man, and that's how she joined the religion. So the judges in the National Jewish Book Awards say of her work that it's a paradigm-shifting achievement in Jewish poetics. It certainly gives a new perspective on various things. It recounts realities where, for one thing, Feldman and her family moved to Israel, and she takes, a look at the country that is more of the outsider perspective. And, it goes into how, part of the reason she and the family moved to Israel was to try to get away from American racism, which is also a part of Glance. But, she finds it in different forms in Israel. And just a few brief notes about Glance. It's published by LSU Press, and I just figured I'd give a little bit of a glance, no pun intended, into the type of poetry that she writes. Just, I'm not a poet myself, but I understand the cadence is often in how the writing is portrayed on the page. So she has some, more traditional stanzas, and she also has more narrative styles as well. Some of it going like into straight up, sentences, but a lot of it is a little more poetic and disjointed than that as well. And also what you can't tell just from me flipping pages is, well, she has a lot of just visceral imagery in these poems, and I will start to read out a few examples of that. I thought I'd start with Beach Diptych, which is referenced also in the judge's remarks. In part, it pays homage to the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. It also, hits in a very painful way, I think, too. Right now, there's imagery in here both of Gaza and of the southern kibbutzim in Israel. They were hit very hard during the Hamas massacres on October 7th, and then, of course, Gaza has been very brutally devastated in the ensuing war. So this poem is in two stanzas, and it is much more of just straight-up narrative prose style, but we start with lines such as, "If you walked to the top of the cliff or take the cable car, your eyes would descend into Lebanon. You have not walked to the top. The children sprawl on the beach, shoveling into their buckets. Not so long ago, the wars of missiles, the water's warring ships, would have prohibited your leisure." A friend from a nearby kibbutz says, as children, they climbed onto the roofs of their houses to watch, like fireworks above the sea. And then later on, there is a direct reference to Gaza. "You see the small beach town and Gaza's towers in the background. You see the children lunging into the waters on either side. You see they are close enough to each other to say hello and don't." And that in itself can be commentary on this very long-lasting, tragic conflict between two peoples. So diaspora is certainly a big theme in this whole collection because Feldman is basically looking for a place to call home. So one of the first poems in here just is directed, call itself Diaspora. And it really touches upon, I think it takes place, in a Mediterranean, perhaps Israeli setting, and it talks about how differently she and her children are addressed. but also there are some common threads that she herself can pick up on with others, like about their similarities and differences. So she says, your children addressed in one language and you another. You trace a map of understanding in a stranger's face. The children's fingers dart along the glass case from sweet to sweet. You let your eyes linger on a stranger's face because they hold your face in their eyes. A pleasure. Often enough in your new country, you find yourself looked through or looked around or away from. A vast continent houses both of your ancestors. Your faces tell a story of its opposite coasts. And now, the children receive their wax paper of breaded sweet treats. The loudspeakers play acoustic oud. The stranger tells you of his African passage as a childhood memory, and yours, a ship's wake across your face. So yeah, also a major theme is she is looking into, making connections with, African populations in Israel as well. And that comes across also in the poem Any Given Day, which in the back Feldman explains is explicitly inspired by violence, police violence and brutality against Ethiopian Israelis and other refugees from Africa. But it specifically takes place when she's picking up her kids from school. So I'll start with the teacher and you talk in your new tongue. She asks you slowly, in the simplest terms, what you understand of the latest protests in the city. Us, black and brown, in the Tel Aviv streets, and the police with tasers and tear gas. For now, the children are worlds away, busy hoisting buckets of water together from the outdoor sink. Their stick and jute boats wait on the bottom of the dry canal. Will you admit part of your own heart's plunge, an unspoken hope to extend childhood by leaving your home country for this one? The family asked the protesters to wait while they sat Shiva and mourned the police killing their unarmed son. So they can only wait so long. So, yeah, we certainly have some unfortunate similarities here between the country, the U.S., that she's trying to take her kids away from, and the realities in this new location in Tel Aviv. I thought I'd move a little more into the visceral imagery of this collection and away from the more overtly narrative style. With The Birds Come, this is all lowercase, run-on, so it's not stanzas either, but it's like a run-on sentence, and so not, prose style either. But this is part of Feldman's poetry where she's evoking bird imagery with The Birds Come. And she evokes the imagery of the Tower of Babel here as she listens to different bird call, such as the white spectacled bulbul of Israel, your attempts to discern voices among voices, kingfishers rasp on the power line cranes, overhead the Syrian woodpecker year-round, the Palestine sunbird, Nubian nightjar, Egyptian goose-eagle owl on magnificent flyaways across the map's borders. If you need a metaphor, someone says, you will learn to live with such songs at such decibels. But then she also evokes birds when talking about her children again in They Ran and Flew Away From You, which starts with, your days are ordinary, to and from school along the park esplanade. The children alert as birds, and as flitting, and as chirping. The sunlight through the ficus and the jacaranda canopy. The children run and fly from you to perch on the rainbow half-shell egg seats. Children alight above your head onto the mama bird's yellow-ringed neck. So, yeah, I just, I appreciate, metaphors, and I like how these two poems are right next to each other and they kind of mirror each other a little bit. To take a step back into American history, we have the poem as a side note to a side note in the history, which is taking a look at a antebellum grave of a slave owner and someone who had also fathered children with one of his slaves, which is not, taken into account in his official history. So that's this poem is about grappling with that. So I'll start with some quotes about this person, the official quotes, like ardent Whig, a brogue quite rich, a genial man who conceived an idea and appears riding a horse outwitting Tories in a South Carolina forest, which distinguishes him as the hero in a side note to the American Revolution. A side note you can follow to a forgotten son, a legislator nullifier slaveholder, also in a grave in the old Presbyterian cemetery. It's probably him, or next of kin, or once twice removed, in this early American South District, distinguished by its nickname Little Ireland, that my mother found in her DNA along with the darkened swath across Central and West Africa. It's from this corpulent chunk of Scotch-Irish vinegar shaded on the DNA analysis world map that my mother's father's father's surname derives, born on the plantation of the distinctively named legislator nullifier slaveholder, as one of the legislator nullifier slaveholders' enslaved persons. Many of the enslaved descendants with the distinctive name have mapped themselves onto a digital genealogy page to follow the lineage. So I just really like that, the way that she is able to use language and genealogy to connect herself, or to connect her character to, these people with their history, more distinctly from Europe. And the whole idea of putting nullifier into the slaveholder name, because, I specifically think of it as like nullifying the connection between him and these family members he would consider to be beneath him. As a penultimate poem to talk about, I think I'll go to Ruth. It feels like sort of a well-trod subject matter, especially for Jews of choice, especially for Jews of choice who convert because of being married to a Jewish man, or a Jewish partner as well. Ruth being a character who comes up a lot as someone who chose to follow biblical Judaism, following her mother-in-law, Naomi, saying, I will follow you and your God will become my God. So this is what Feldman does with it. Where, as is often the case in these stories, she's talking to someone else who is a bit of an outsider to the situation. So here, one of the first lines is, both of you in your Shabbat white clothes, both of you stand in the living room window, the two geodes on the windowsill, two corpses, their broken rainbows thrown all over your bodies in the redirected sunlight. Both of you have taken the Hebrew name of Ruth, as your rabbis advised, in honor of the first convert, the progenitor of royal lineages, which also refers to Ruth being an ancestor of King David. Both of you recite blessings at the table. You asked her as she asked you what it feels like to leave the people you know. The overlap's like a glimpse in a mirror as you talk about what it is to be alone when your Ashkenazi husbands aren't accompanying you. Wasn't that part of Ruth's story too? A new country journeyed, a newly converted status, but still the lingering questions about foreignness. The one Ruth's husband's next of kin couldn't overcome, regarding her with suspicion. I do like, the throwbacks to the Ruth story. I also like how, the mirrors and distorted light of the geodes plays into it, like, saying that, things are reflected on these two converts differently than they might be on the Jews who were of birth. But to end my little journey through this book, I'm going to go to the final poem in the collection, Blue Hour, which, again, really, there's some visceral imagery in here that really stands out. We're also in a new location, in a Paris apartment, and it also takes place, when the narrator has a baby child. And there is a lot of blue imagery in this poem as well, like my aqua topaz birthstone, the twilight lapis of the mikveh, the midnight navy of my mother's hand-sewn suit, but the iceberg blue of the soles of your feet, as you colic cry yourself, deplete of oxygen, pitches us over the earth, as if we've angled from our fifth-floor windows over Paris, delivered, untethered, above the chimney pots and apartments, severed from the clocks the city is wound around. At the end of what I read, we go away from the blue imagery into this other visceral imagery of, it's like she's and her child become untethered, and she uses that word, from the earth. And as they're like leaning over the landscape of Paris, it just sort of brought me back home to the idea that, you know, she keeps looking for a home in these poems, and she finds a way to sort of to look at these images and these geographies and these realities, and, you know, see them, but she's also, you know, not quite part of them, and to sort of be leaning over that, you know, that landscape of the Paris apartment into the city. I thought, well, it's just being untethered, and it's just bringing that imagery home so wonderfully. So that image of like leaning over and feeling like you're untethered from the scene in that hyper specific Parisian environment, I just thought it was great. So yeah, that is from Glance by Chanda Feldman. And that about covers it for me now. I will leave links to a biography of Feldman and information about her book down below. Thank you for taking this very informal journey with me through trying as a very non-poetic person to engage with poetry. I'm very grateful. I often turn to the Jewish Book Council to experience Jewish life in different ways, and that's sort of been my access point for a while into looking into poetry during National Poetry Month. Now, of course, we are into May already, but actually I do have some end of April videoing I still want to get through, so expect me back on this channel for my belated Would You Read It challenge, where I look at old ballads of the BookTube Prize and read their first few paragraphs to pages and discuss their merits with you, so stay tuned. If you read or wrote any poetry during National Poetry Month in the US or during any other time, I'd love to hear about what spoke to you during that process. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.